Thanks for stopping by to check out Vintage Audio Review. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the Carver CT-Seven Tuner preamplifier. The Carver CT-Seven was built around 1989, plus or minus a year, best I can tell, and retailed for about $600. As a reference point, a gallon of gas cost about 90 cents back then. The main reason I swapped out the Carver CT-Seven with my Yamaha RXV 2090 was that the Carver CT-Seven, like a lot of Carver's tuners, tuner preamps, and receivers, has a function called sonic holography. And what that function does is expand the sound stage, is probably the best way that I could describe it, just to where it sounds like music is coming over here and over here rather than just right here. It doesn't work with all music, and my speakers aren't placed optimally to really appreciate the effect, but it does work often enough and it is enjoyable. As far as the sound of the Carver tuner preamplifier, I really enjoy the sound. I use it mainly when listening to CDs or CDs that have been digitized into .wav files and then recorded onto an SD card, which my media player will play, or just listening to LPs. I think it does a pretty good job with any music that is thrown at it. I will point out the features in a moment, but before I do that, I will point out the things that I do not like about the unit. And one of them is the remote control. It is hard to read the keys. Of course, back then they didn't spend a lot on like backlit keypads and all that in their remotes, but it is hard to read the keys. It is the original remote for this unit, which is nice, and it does control most of the features. The other thing that I do not like is the volume control here is hard to read. There's a little white dot, and it's hard to read when you're sitting 13 feet away as it's moving. It's a motorized volume control, but it would be nice if they put an LED in it, or I might do that at some point. It is hard to read the lettering in dimmer light. And this particular unit has a problem with the tuner in that it doesn't work on the auto mode. It will not tune a station very well, but if you go to manual, it will tune. I don't listen to FM on this stereo, but it's one of those things that if I really get a lot of free time one day, I will go in and try to solve that problem. But AM tuner works, but I don't listen to that at all with this system. So that being said, I'm going to go point out the little features across the front. So this obviously is the Carver CT-Seven in all its glory. Starting off over here at the left, we have the power on-off switch. Obviously you can use a remote. The headphone jack. You have bass, mid-range, and treble tone controls. You have 8 presets for either AM or FM channels. This is your auto manual tuning switch, of which the auto does not really work. AM and FM, and your channel down and up buttons. Over here we have phono, CD, video 1 and video 2 / aux inputs. Here's your sonic hologram button, your audio muting, and it has an ACCD, which stands for asymmetrical charge coupled detection, which is Carver's way of dealing with FM multipath interference, as well as here is the tuner selection button. You have your balance control here, obviously your volume here. So one of my little nitpicks on this receiver is that if you decide you want to control the volume by hand and turn it, if you have bigger fingers like what I do, it barely fits in here and it just makes it awkward to turn the knob. Well, it has a loudness switch, which I usually prefer the loudness on this unit. Here's your stereo mono button. And then it has a tape dubbing, whether you dub from 2 to 1 or 1 to 2. It's really not that important these days, but it was back then. And then you can select either the tape monitor 1 or tape monitor 2 circuit, and then this activates the tape monitor altogether. So that is a high-level overview of the Carver CT-Seven Tuner preamplifier. And this is what the CT-Seven looks like from the top down with the cover removed. This first piece of data shows the SNR THD at 1 kilohertz for the CD input to the preamp output. The level going into the CD input is 2 volts and the level coming out of the preamp output is 2 volts, so it should be about 0 dB gain. We're seeing very low THD, less than 0.005%, and the SNR is at least 100 dB. The spec for the brand new CT-Seven was a maximum of 0.5% THD across the audio band. And the signal to noise ratio was greater than 84 dB, so we're doing pretty good here. So here we have the frequency response of the CD input to the preamp output under the same 2 volt in, 2 volt out conditions. And the only thing Carver said in its spec was that it was flat from 20 to 20 kilohertz. Well, I don't know what flat means to them, but here flatness would be plus or minus about half a dB, or more precisely, it's about maybe minus 0.5 dB to plus 0.2 dB flatness. So 0.7 of a dB in my book. So here we have the THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz for the CD input to the tape monitor output, with the CD input at 2 volts and the gain control set so that there is a 2 volt output as in the previous two measurements, which I forgot to mention were taken with all 3 tone controls set flat. The reason I showed this plot is because I would hook up my A to D converter at the tape monitor output if I wanted to digitize something. And you can tell that the SNR and THD and the THD plus noise is really good at this point. So this is the THD SNR at 1 kilohertz for the CD input to the preamp output, with the gain adjusted to get the maximum 7 volt RMS output that the CT-Seven is spec'd at, with an input of 2 volts RMS. So the THD and SNR and the THD plus noise all look pretty darn good, which is the maximum that you would get out of the preamp. And 7 volts is quite a bit. Moving to the phono input, for a 5 millivolt input to the phono stage measured at the tape monitor 1 output, we can see excellent THD, SNR, and the THD plus noise. It all looks really, really good. In fact, this beats the Yamaha RX-V 2090, which was the best one I had measured to date. Here is the frequency response of the phono stage with a 5 millivolt input. It's basically plus or minus half a dB, or you could say that its flatness is about 1 dB across the band. There is no spec from Carver on what the flatness is other than flat. Here is the effect of turning the mid-range tone control to max, and here it is when the mid-range tone control is set to minimum. Here is the frequency response plot for the bass tone control set to maximum, and likewise here the bass tone control is set to a minimum. And lastly, we have the frequency response with the treble tone control set to maximum and now set to minimum. Unfortunately, I did not get data for the loudness control. As you can tell from the measurement data, after 30 plus years, the Carver CT-Seven still maintains most of its specification integrity. I really enjoy using the Carver CT-Seven, and I was glad I was able to do some bartering with Ian in order to get this guy. Aside from a few of the little complaints I had on the unit, I didn't mention that the face of the CT-Seven is a bit hard to read unless you're close. That is common with a lot of Carver gear of that vintage, whatever silkscreen pattern they use. It's just kind of hard to read against the metal background. However, the remote control does duplicate all the functions, and you can do everything you need from the remote. One little complaint I have with this unit is that I do get a bit of hum on the phono stage when that is selected. It's not real bad, but you can hear it if you don't have anything playing. If you look at the THD SNR plot for the phono stage, you can see that there is a 60 Hertz hum component that's down about 80 dB. Possibly if I went in and replaced some filter caps along the way, I could maybe drop that down and maybe the hum would go away, but not necessarily. I should mention, in regards to the tuner problem that I have with this unit, I did come across a Carver MXR 130 with the exact same problem. So my guess is there's something going on in the tuner, a bad cap in that area, or maybe a bad IC related to it that is causing the symptoms I see. But like I said, I don't listen to the FM tuner on that system. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have not subscribed, please do so. And if you have any comments, I would love to hear them. Once again, thank you, and have a great day or night.